European power. So no idea, how it was black and red. But it was black
Overtown, originally known as Colored Town, was the heart of Miami's black community, an enclave of culture, resilience, and vibrant life. But like far too many black neighborhoods in America, it has endured decades of systemic disenfranchisement, displacement, and racial violence. Overtown's story is one of survival, of voices that refuse to be silenced. Today, the community stands at the crossroads of history and progress, still fighting for its right to exist and thrive. We brought our cameras to Overtown with one goal: to listen, to hear the neighborhood story straight from the source. But to truly grasp the depth of this community's story, we have to go all the way back to the beginning.
The reason the black section of Miami was called Overtown was because in order to get from Coconut Grove to friends who were in Miami along in the new town, you had to go over downtown to get to the black section. The new city arriving blacks had to live in the northwest quadrant, which was Colored Town. Why was that? The railroad and the white business community wanted the black folks to be in Colored Town because they would be close enough to walk to work, but out of sight of the tourists. It was a plan to keep us segregated from white folks, out of sight of white folks, easier to control by the police if you have them all in one section. And that's how these communities of black people evolved.
The black laborers who built Miami from the ground up lived in a starkly different reality from their white counterparts. While the rest of the city flourished, Overtown was intentionally left without basic services. No sanitation, paved roads, or adequate housing, forcing residents into overcrowded, unsafe conditions. Structural violence shaped daily life, as city policies empowered absentee landlords to exploit black tenants, and racial violence kept the community vulnerable.
The people of Overtown have been in a perpetual state of resilience, and trauma. And even in the midst of it, overwhelmingly, there have been so many spaces in which Overtown has thrived.
Artists like Ella Fitzgerald, Ray Charles, and Aretha Franklin lit up the stage of the Lyric Theater, a beacon of entertainment in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, when Overtown was also known as the Harlem of the South, a cultural and creative powerhouse where music and art flourished. It was one of the few places where black audiences could see world-class performances, making it a sanctuary for both artistic expression and community pride.
My family moved in August 1st, 1948. Moved from 159 Northwest 10th Street, where my mother was born, 2 blocks north of the Lyric. It was built by a black man for the black community. And so that was one of the reasons that I saved it. And so after the riots in 1980, with my board, we took a ride through Overtown to see what was still standing. The churches were still standing, and with all the devastation, there were other buildings too. And this one little building standing then by itself, did not have a roof. The homeless were living in it, defecating in it. It was an awful sight. And when I got home, I asked my uncle about it and gave him the address, 819 Northwest 2nd Avenue. He said, "Oh, that's the Lyric Theater."
Oh,
I
wow.
said, and there was a sign on it that said that it was going to be, the city was going to demolish it because it was an unsafe structure. It was owned by the church at the time, Daddy Grace's church, but it had been abandoned. and neglected. So it was really a very hard project to do, as you might imagine.
But even as Overtown flourished as a cultural hub, the forces of systemic racism and discrimination were never far behind, as local government and city planners had other ideas for Overtown's future. The construction of I-95 tore through the heart of Overtown, reducing its population from 40,000 to just 12,000 in a decade as residents were forced from their homes. Despite objections from community leaders and residents, there was no compensation or relocation efforts. Homes, families, and businesses that had been the lifeblood of the area were erased, all in the name of so-called progress.
All of the people who had influence had to move. Not because they wanted to, but for instance, I-95, that many of the people who lived here had to move. I remember the house that was right there.
Another tactic used to displace Overtown residents was the Urban Renewal Initiative. In 1965, the city of Miami spent $18 million to buy up land in the neighborhood, promising to improve infrastructure and revitalize the area. Instead, this policy led to widespread demolition, displacing even more residents and erasing local businesses.
Nigger removal. That's what it is. It's very simply that. The first thing we were faced with was not enough for our land. The second thing, whether you wanted it or not, you had to go. And if you didn't go in time for the bulldozers, we were literally put in the streets.
What was marketed as progress was, in truth, a calculated effort to remove Black residents and make way for new developments, none of which were designed to serve Overtown's existing community.
It is ridiculous. That's what I said.
And why is it ridiculous?
Because I think we were misled. You know, when we saw this going in, then we thought we were going to see renovations, buildings. I feel as though a lot of money has gone down the drain in this area in one way or the other. Okay? And all I can see is beautification of streets.
What Miami was maybe 50 years ago was built on top of the pain and the suffering and the racial violence and displacement of the indigenous tribes, right? And then now we're seeing it happen again, and the cycle repeat itself. And now all these high rises are being built, and that's being built on top of what, like the Black community there.
Miami is a city that's always evolving, but in Overtown, the cycle of displacement continues with a new but familiar threat: gentrification. Everywhere we went, it became clear. Everything was changing, and it was happening fast. To gain a better understanding of these shifts, we spoke with Nicole Crooks and Rachel Prestipino from Catalyst Miami.
If that's the history that I would say most of our elected officials know and people in power and developers know, then why are we doing it all over again? Like, why are we continuing to expand highways and then saying that we're not going to do it the same way again?
Catalyst Miami, one of the grant's community partner organizations founded by Mayor Daniela Levin Cava in 1996, supports Black and Brown communities like Overtown through public policy and grassroots leadership programs.
We're being very intentional, like through our historic legacy trek and through the work that we're doing with our young people and our elders, the whole intergenerational components of storytelling and connection. So we're trying to own our own destinies by telling our own stories here.
That areas that white folks just a generation ago wouldn't dare step into, now they can't wait to buy into. It's an insult. Gentrification is an insult to the Black community.
While filming in Overtown, the intense heat was unavoidable. Walking between locations, we struggled to find shade as the sun beat down, and the sidewalks and tall buildings radiated the heat back at us, highlighting the neighborhood's lack of shaded areas. Decades of systemic neglect have left communities like Overtown even more vulnerable today, as Black and Brown neighborhoods are often disproportionately impacted by environmental hazards. Yet, as extreme weather events and flooding intensify in Miami, Overtown has become more desirable to those displaced by rising waters, a trend known as climate gentrification.
Overtown is prime land because it was built on a ridge, so it's higher, drier land, as is Coconut Grove, as is Little Haiti, as is Liberty City, as is, right?
While we were out in the community, we paid a visit to Dorsey Park, once a vital space for Black baseball players in the Negro Leagues during the 1920s. It offered a rare refuge in a time when Jim Crow laws kept them off major league fields. Today, the park's legacy is overshadowed by its proximity to 2 large cement plants, which pose severe health risks to the community. In predominantly Black neighborhoods, like those around Dorsey Park, systemic racism has led to a greater concentration of environmental hazards. The dust and toxic compounds from these plants contribute to chronic health issues, such as respiratory and heart diseases, perpetuating the cycle of health inequities and environmental injustice.
When we look at economics and so on and so forth, we know typically that no one is coming to save us. And so we have to create strategies to be able to sustain ourselves in the midst of everything that happens. And so by doing things like disaster preparedness training, and really doing things where we're looking at how do we remain well in terms of mindfulness, in terms of resources.
Until the lions tell their story, Tales of the Hunt will continue to glorify the hunter.
This year, we partnered with Catalyst Miami and others to host the Overtown History Exchange, a key component of FIU's Commons for Justice grant.
When you have the opportunity to work with an organization or a grant like this, you're creating the place and the space to get the story right as well. Doing the work like this is not saving as in they need saving, it's saving as in the preservation.
The day featured oral history recordings, presentations, and vignettes. These activities highlighted Overtown's rich legacy while connecting the community, local leaders, the university, and younger generations in a shared space of reflection and celebration.
We really focused on starting with here we have kind of a collage photo wall. We decided to focus on 7 different women from the community, and we arranged them in time period basically, right? There have been different trials.
I've lived in Miami most of my life. I went to school for part of my high school in Overtown, yet some of the history was just so out of reach. And I think in doing the archival research and, going out into the community and learning these facts, I learned the fact that there's a real agenda to keep this information out of the hands of the community members.
The event was held at the historic Ward Rooming House, a landmark in Overtown. Opened in 1925, it served as a refuge for Black and Native American visitors during segregation. Its conch-style architecture honors the Bahamian community that built Miami, and today it features an indoor exhibition of Bahamian artwork. Curated by Hampton art lovers, it celebrates Overtown's cultural heritage.
History exchange was the past, present, and future, and finding a way to exchange history intergenerationally. So one generation passing the baton, passing that history down to another in a way of preserving it. History is the most important foundation that we can build upon, because if we don't know what happened in the past, we won't know how to navigate our future.
It became clear to us that if we were going to be talking about the importance of preserving history, we had to sit down with Dr. Dorothy Jenkins Fields, one of Miami's most influential historians. She's been at the forefront of uncovering and safeguarding Miami's Black history for the younger generation.
I was preparing. It was an all-white school. I didn't know at the time I was the first Black on the faculty. I was going to prepare early for the bicentennial. There was so much media about getting ready for everyone to celebrate the 200th birthday of the country. So I said, well, I'll call down to the library. At that time, the school libraries didn't get that much money. Times repeat themselves. They're not getting much now for other reasons, to be continued. So I called first, told her that I was looking for books on Blacks, especially Blacks in Florida. She put me on hold, and then she came back after what seemed like an enormous length of time. She said, we only have a folder with obituaries. So I said, the question, why? Why do you not have any books about Blacks? The answer she gave changed my life and the life of the entire community as it relates to Black history. Her answer was, I guess those people haven't thought enough of themselves to write their history. It will be on my epitaph. And so that's how it really got started. After, I started paying attention to the stories, and I said, well, maybe I'll collect photographs about the community. I was called down to the school board, and they said, for 2 years, we will transfer you from the school library we'll reassign you downtown if you will agree to being reassigned. So you will be the first educator for the Historical Museum of Southern Florida, now known as History Miami. You will have to develop the curriculum for the gallery. So that's where we'll place you. And I said, oh yes, because again, so now I'm hearing about a historical society for the second time in my life. I couldn't believe that somebody else hadn't done it already. I couldn't believe they're waiting for me. And so during the coffee hour after church, everybody's standing around drinking coffee. And so I'm telling them what I'm doing, talking to everybody, whoever would listen. And through Garth Reeves, he started putting it in the paper, and people started bringing me things. That's how I started collecting. I didn't know anything about anything. When you're in a graduate program, you have to write, of course, a paper. And so my paper was on the development of a Black photographic archives. Yes, that's where it started. Sure. I was working full-time, doing all those things that the school system said I had to do. Pick the girls up in the afternoon, have dinner, help them with the homework, put them to bed, put them to sleep. And from midnight until 6, I stayed up creating the Black archives. No, I didn't plan it. I just knew that the Black history needed to be not only preserved, but made available, and to use it to better our community. I didn't know.
As we continued exploring the neighborhood, we stumbled upon an exhibition inside one of Overtown's preserved historic landmarks, Dana A. Dorsey's house. Dana A. Dorsey, the son of former slaves, became Miami's first Black millionaire through his success in real estate. This collaborative exhibition, titled On the Bandwagon, was created in partnership between the Black Archives and the Miami Urban Contemporary Experience. The artwork focused on the banning of books and the obstruction of access to historical information in schools. The exhibition reflected the ongoing struggle to ensure that the history of Overtown and other marginalized communities isn't erased or rewritten. As we moved through each room, artist Nika Sweet took the time to share the deeper meaning behind her powerful pieces.
Thanks. And then we read about this one being like, that kind of ball like doesn't sink, so no matter how hard they push, like it'll one day like come back up, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yes. Yeah, so that's like my metaphor for things being banning things is an unsustainable strategy. So, and then these images are like abstract versions of like the 3 of the authors that were banned.
Okay.
The bottom one being Toni Morrison, which is a callback from that.
Most of these encounters were completely unplanned. As we walked through Overtown hoping people might share their stories, we were met with some of the most welcoming individuals. On that first day of filming, residents went out of their way to help us understand not only the history, but the importance of passing down the truth to younger generations. As we walked through Overtown, 2 buildings near the highway caught our attention: Mount Zion Baptist Church and Greater Bethel AME. For decades, these churches have stood as beacons of resilience, offering sanctuary and a place to unite. More than just a place of worship, they've been centers of empowerment and resistance.
Church has always been a place where people could come to find peace and some kind of solace. You have to, you can't, as missionaries, you can't start jumping on people about what they believe, their religion and stuff, and their stomachs are growling. But I just believe that we have people in that church who can see the future and plan for the future. Don't plan for me, because I'm not going to even be here. But see what young people now, what they will want. I'm 85 years old now. I came here in 1960 when that church would be packed. You couldn't get a seat in there. Now, you can sit anywhere you want to. You would use the word resilient. We bounce back. I don't know how, I know how we do it. We believe that God is on our side.
If there's one thing that has united everyone in Overtown, it's a love for traditional soul food. The moment we stepped into Jackson Soul Food, we understood why it's so special. Established in 1946, this isn't just a place to enjoy a meal. Every wall serves as a canvas of community. This restaurant stands as a living testament to resilience, culture, and the enduring spirit of Overtown. We were given an inside look at the kitchen, and from the moment we stepped in, we were welcomed in like family. I can't just recommend one thing because every dish we tried was outstanding, from the pancakes and catfish to the chicken wings and their famous shrimp and grits, and the warm, attentive service made the whole experience even better. Leading it all was Taurus Jackson, one of the main cooks and owners, who ran the kitchen with effortless charisma. Despite the fast-paced energy of the kitchen and 4 students trailing him with a camera, he moves with precision and energy, making sure everything was just right.
Can't get this nowhere else but Jackson Soul Food. We're working, freshly made. Only in Jackson. Nowhere but Jackson. That is on the roundabout.
We ordered pretty much the entire menu while we were in the restaurant, and the feeling of community in there is palpable. You instantly feel like you belong, and everyone is willing to have a conversation while sharing some great food.
Freshly made.
You know, they're moving the old out, bringing them new, like we said, and we got new developers, new owners. We just got new people involved, you know, want some change. Like now, look outside. Yeah. So that is what we up against, and that's what we're working with.
Owner Shirley Ingram has served everyone, from visiting presidents to civil rights leaders and musicians, and has expanded the family-owned business with new locations in Opa-locka and Miami's airport. We had the chance to visit Miss Shirley during her shift at the Opa-locka location to hear the story of how this iconic restaurant got its start.
Since 1990, I started Jackson Soul Food. In 1946, my parents had a restaurant called Mama's Cafe in Overtown. And when they retired, that's when I opened up Jackson Soul Food. And I've been there approximately 34 years. I've been running Jackson Soul Food. And I've been in the community. Well, I remember when I was about 6 years old. And when my parents had Mama's Cafe, I used to hide in the back seat of the car because they would get up 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work and they wouldn't let me go. So I would be in the back seat hiding. And when they get to work, then I'm at work with them. So I used to stand up on a crate and serve the customers. And to this day, I have a customer that remembered me standing on the crate all those years ago. So for about 30 years, I worked 7 days a week. So I never took a day off because I wanted to make sure that my community was getting the best of the best.
Until when do you see yourself working here? Until you can't anymore? Yeah? Wow.
Down the street from the original Jackson Soul Food in Overtown, we came across Miami legend and another incredibly influential historian, Dr. Marvin Dunn, jamming out to Marvin Gaye in his new community space, the Teach the Truth Garden.
So, are you in your first, third, second year of the garden?
No, this garden was a parking lot in November. We just put this here. Ooh, a little wet. Let me move the camera back. Yeah, I'll give you some. Stand back till you get wet.
Alright.
Basil?
Lemon.
Lemongrass, yeah.
Oh.
You know why I have the American flag out here?
Why?
Because in addition to growing vegetables and giving most of it away, we also pass out banned books.
Oh!
Free to anybody who wants them. And most of them are books that the governor does not want children to read. So this garden really serves the function of being a place where banned books can be given away free. And the flags are here because this flag belongs to all of us, not just the right-wing fascists who wrap themselves up in it and claim to be Americans. This is my flag too. I'm a vet. I spent 7 years in the Navy defending my country. So this is my flag. This is our flag. You know why this is important, what we're doing right here? This land is being loaned to my nonprofit. Loaned. In about 3 years, a building like that one is going to go up here. So this is borrowed land that the developer is funding. They paid for all of this. Others help, but basically this is a developer said, okay, I'm going to do it the right way. The land's just vacant. It's going to be vacant for 3 years. You can use it for a farm.
Oh, wow.
So that's how we got to use this land. But it's temporary, and it's a sidetrack from the normal gentrification that happens in Overtown. It's like, you see, it's an advancing canyon coming from the east into Overtown. That's Overtown's future. You're looking at there, and there, and there.
I can't believe it's transformed like this since November.
It's November.
A huge shout out to all of the people of Overtown, and just may we always honor the humanity and dignity of all of them, all of us, the we.
This is prime property. Developers want it. But what we're trying to do, we're working on a plan now to keep it and make it better than it is now for the next generation.
It's okay to welcome in all, and we welcome all, but don't forget about the small people that been there, holding it down all these years before everything started happening. So that's all I ask of my leaders in my community to, don't forget who held it down.
So my hopes for Overtown are really around our community being able to stand in our power and be liberated, like mind, body, spirit.
That's such a human impulse, this like desire for legacy, and just remembering that the ordinary deserves to be documented too.
This is the first 50 years. I expect the next 50 to be just as exciting. And 50 years from now, we'll be sitting here having a conversation. You'll be a little older, of course, I'll be the same.
I think that God is blessing me because I blessed others.
Thank you so much.
Welcome home. Come back again. See you soon.